Doing something a little bit different tonight. Check out the system recap, but then stick around for a mailbag segment where we touch on a ton of topics. Let's get into the system recap. The Minnesota Twins were off Thursday, so we are starting with the St. Paul Saints, and Alex Kirilloff should be back on the Twins before too long. Played DH yesterday, is at first base tonight. Had a good game, a couple hits. Double that he almost hits out here, high off the wall. It's a nice game for him. Byron Buxton had a scheduled off day today, as did Willie Castro, who I think is on paternity leave right now. So congrats to Willie. So no Buxton. Expect him to be back out there tomorrow. But Kirilloff looking good. Louie Varland, who pitched out of the bullpen for the Saints, but he threw 4 innings, so it's not like it was a short outing. But this was a 100.2 mile-per-hour fastball that is with the Hawkeye tracking, the same system they use in the major leagues. Very sophisticated. But Louie Varland looked great. Here's a painted cutter. They're using the automated strike zone earlier in the week in AAA, so that was a strike. Beautiful pitch. And then this changeup to the lefty really gets him. So he had a lot working in this one. Again, the velo was way up. Hitting 100, he averaged 97.2, 2.3 miles per hour above his average. Brooks Lee did have an error in this game, but he also turned a couple of nice double plays here. You see this one from Kirilloff to Lee to Varland. Might be seeing those guys playing together for a real long time. Fun game. Over to Wichita, Tanner Schobel, who's been struggling, as you can see there, since getting promoted. The Twins' second-round pick from last year out of Virginia Tech goes deep. He's had a pretty solid year overall because he was playing really well in Cedar Rapids. That's his 15th homer of the year, so he'll continue to come along. I dig those Turbo Tubs jerseys they have. It's a unique color palette. CJ Culpepper on the mound for Cedar Rapids. And speaking of velo, that was a 96 mile per hour fastball according to the stadium gun, so that's a little bit less official. But still, guy from last year's draft class as well. He went 4 2/3 shutout innings and struck out 5. They made him work, though. He threw 92 pitches in 4 2/3 innings. So going to need to try to clean that up. But he was looking very good at parts of his start in this one. And again, 4 2/3 shutout innings for CJ Culpepper. Over to Fort Myers, we don't have video of these guys, but do want to call out Walker Jenkins. We maybe just do this nightly. Walker Jenkins, 2 for 4 with a walk and a stolen base. Even his ground out had a 100 mile per hour exit velocity. So here are the notable hitting performances from across the system. 3-hit night for Kirilloff, 3-hit night for Ricardo Olivar. The home runs are all listed down below there. Moving on over to the pitching side, not a whole lot of standouts over here. CJ Culpepper pitched really well, but it was a short start. But do want to call out Jack Noble as a guy they signed as an undrafted free agent last year. He has a 2.80 ERA in 12 starts now. So a guy that's been pitching pretty well down in the lower minors. Here are the results. The Saints went into extra innings, and I just had to call it. I had to record this one, so I'll have to update you later on that one. Twins off, and then there are the rest of the results. The news of the day, this was the big day, a big transaction day. There was all these guys on waivers. Were the Twins going to get any of them? They didn't. They didn't get any of them. I wasn't too surprised by that because there were some contending teams below the Twins in the waiver priority, and most of the guys didn't get past the Twins. The Twins didn't claim anybody that went beyond them. And Cleveland, to kind of add to this sting, Cleveland picks up Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Matt Moore, basically because they were the worst contending team, I guess, the team with a really realistic contention ideas. So quite the haul for them. Would have loved to have been able to upgrade the bullpen for the Twins. But, this was out of their control, really. With these other teams, if had Cleveland not claimed them, I feel pretty good that Cincinnati might have. They claimed a couple of guys. Miami might have. It is what it is. But I wanted to pass that news item along. And one of the guys that did not get claimed was Randall Grichuk. And got a question about that. Am I surprised Grichuk went unclaimed? No, I'm not. I'm not all very surprised that the Twins weren't active in trying to claim the bats. Again, I thought some bullpen upgrades would have been tremendous. But this team already is going to have kind of a hard time fitting all these guys coming back from the injured list onto the roster as is, even with the roster is expanding. Again, they only expand 2 spots. We're going to get more on that in just a moment. So, you know, Willie Castro's on rehab assignment, Byron Buxton's on rehab assignment, Alex Kirilloff's on rehab assignment. They're going to have to fit all those guys in already. Grichuk, you could maybe argue, is a better version of Luplow, but I don't think Luplow is going to stick around for long. I think he's going to lose his roster spot to these guys coming back. Bjorn asked about September call-up predictions. Again, only 2 extra spots. Now, it used to be they expanded all the way to 40. So I'm expecting Willie Castro, who I think he's on rehab assignment, but he's also currently on paternity leave. So I think whenever Willie's ready to come back, he's going to take that spot probably tomorrow, I'm guessing, unless his paternity leave extends. If there's somebody else that comes up in the meantime, if it's going to be a couple more days for him, they're not going to be around for very long. So we'll kind of pencil Willie into that spot on the hitter side. I think they will add a hitter and a pitcher. The pitcher, I think probably more than likely, and I think probably people will roll their eyes at a lot of these guys because they're all retreads in some way. But I think Giovanni Moran, very shortly after I recorded this, Giovanni Moran was placed on the injured list with the Saints. So it will not be him. Might just be Balazovic, who's been up and down like crazy lately. Brent Hedrick's another possibility, or Louie Varland, who they're going to try to give a look in the bullpen, it sounds like here. Not sure if they're going to try to kind of get him comfortable in that role in St. Paul first before calling him up, or if they're just going to give him that spot. But I don't expect it to be any kind of, prospects we haven't seen, anything like that. Tyler asked about Austin Martin. I think the only way Austin Martin gets called up is if something goes wrong. Something goes pretty wrong. Again, there's just so many guys returning from injury, especially on the hitter side. It's tremendous that he's played well, that he's playing well. It's a bit of a small sample, but I think, he ended last year great. He was amazing in the Arizona Fall League. And so to see him in his first exposure to AAA playing as well as he is great. But some more thoughts here. This question basically boils down to, why are prospects so up and down sometimes? We have these guys that are super hyped, and then all of a sudden they have a bad year, and then the next year all of a sudden they bounce back again. And I think, one thing is if you can figure this out, you probably have a job in a major league team somewhere because it's tough. But, these guys aren't robots. They're not little production machines that are just going to do what you expect them to all the time. They've got stuff going on in their personal lives. They've got stuff going on with their health. They've got trying to adjust to new places, new teammates, new opponents. It's tough, and that's why there's so much focus on, like, when prospect rankings and things like that, on upside, on potential, because sometimes the journey to get there is really weird and unexpected. I mean, Royce Lewis was pretty bad in Double-A in 2019, and then 2020 happens. Obviously, he's not playing. He's got the 2 ACLs. He's obviously not playing, and he's a star. What? Of course, we're talking about a former number 1 overall pick here, but it was very easy along many points of Royce Lewis's minor league journey to say, like, oh, this guy's not going to make it. And, look at him now. What would happen to Michael A. Taylor, if Buxton returns to play center field? One of the things that I really don't like about this conversation a lot of people are having is turning it into Buxton versus Taylor, and there's no reason to go there, I don't think. Yes, only one of them can play center field. Left field is right there. You could absolutely have Buxton in center field and Taylor in left field. Think about a defensive outfield of Taylor, Buxton, and Kepler. My goodness. What happens to the other guys? Matt Wallner can DH then. When Buxton's not DHing, he's in center field. Well, you got DH there. Wallner can DH. Kirilloff, when he comes back, he can play first base. That kind of leaves like Solano and Gallo without a spot, but whatever. Solano's going to hit against lefties. Gallo's put himself in the position he's in. So I don't think just because Byron is back and is going to play center, hopefully, that puts Taylor out of a job. John asked if I could guarantee the health and peak performance of one player in the playoffs, not including Buxton or Correa. Who would it be? I think that's a fun question. That's a tricky question. My actually focus is just let's get this playoff losing streak over. I think Pablo Lopez is the ace of this team. I think he's the guy that I would pick here because if we get a peak, if Pablo stays healthy, we get a peak performance out of him in the postseason. I think that puts the Twins in the best position to win one game at least. Obviously, the lineup still has to hit. The bullpen still has to deliver. There's a lot else that can go wrong, but he would be my pick on that one. That's a good one for comments. Who would you guys pick on that one? I think there's a lot of good answers on that one. Robert asks about some guys who might be on the pitching staff from this year to next year, guys who the Twins don't have, asking about Sonny Gray, Tyler Mahle, and Kenta Maeda. Sonny Gray is going to be 34 in November. Kenta Maeda is going to be 36 in April. Those are some big considerations on their futures. Tyler Mahle, I kind of get the sense that if Tyler Mahle was interested in like that Chris Paddock pillow contract, I think that would have already happened. Sonny Gray, I think, has pitched well enough to deserve a qualifying offer, so I think the Twins are going to offer him that. Whether or not he's talked about potentially not playing after this year, so I don't know how serious he is about that, or if that's just something he's thrown out there. But it's certainly something to consider. I'm guessing he would much prefer a multi-year deal, but again, being 34 years old in November, some guys age extremely well, especially as starting pitchers. It seems like, if you can maintain and, stay in a rhythm, there's some guys approaching their 40s that are still pitching pretty well. But, I don't know. I don't know if Sonny Gray is going to have as big of a market as you would imagine given his performance this year. It'll be interesting. The Twins clearly are pretty into this guy. They traded a first-round draft pick for him. That was a pretty big commitment to trade that much of a prospect capital guy in Chase Petty for Sonny Gray. And I think people got to stop with this Sonny Gray doesn't like Rocco BS. Sonny Gray is not pitching any more innings anywhere else. There's not a single manager across baseball, I don't think, that would have thrown Sonny Gray maybe more than a handful more innings than he's thrown this year. I think that is pretty silly. So I think there definitely will be some mutual interest there. It kind of will all depend on, what motivations they have. Kenta Maeda, this is the first time he's going to be a free agent, and he was not very satisfied with the way that his contract that he originally signed with the Dodgers had went. He's the one that requested a trade out of there. He's going to be 36 in April. Is he going to want to keep going? I don't know. I'm pretty confident he's going to want to hit the open market no matter how he feels about the Twins, just to get there, just to be able to do it for the first time. Because when he came over from Japan, it was the posting system. So the Dodgers just paid the posting fee. That was the only team he could negotiate with. He had no say. So I'm guessing he's very excited to be able to be a free agent for the first time. I don't know if there's going to be interest there. Obviously, him being a little bit older than Sonny Gray, there's even less likelihood that he'll get a multi-year deal. We'll see. The Twins are pretty set if they don't add any of those guys for next year. With a lot of guys coming back. And, at this point, they have Varland and Ober in the minor leagues right now. That's not even considering some guys who are going to present themselves in between now and then. Jamie Cameron, asks who the hitter and pitcher most under the radar in the Twins system is. Want to call out that he and Jeremy Nygaard have a new joint venture, a podcast that they started recently that you should go check out. But the guys I landed on, I wanted to force myself to pick some really deep dives here, guys outside of my top 50, but also not like, some 17-year-old guys that nobody's ever heard of in the Dominican Summer League or something. Pearson Ole is my pitcher I'm taking, and Patrick Winkle is the hitter I'm taking. Both of these guys are with Wichita. They're both 23. Pearson Ole's been pitching great. A guy who is really a pitcher first, who they have helped add velocity, which is sort of the formula with your Bailey Obers and your other guys that have Louie Varland, all these other later round picks that they've had, and they've brought to the big leagues. So Pearson Ole is kind of looking like, if he took a huge step from last year to this year, if he could somehow take another step this offseason, He's going to be somebody who's definitely going to be very on the radar with the way he's pitched in Double-A. Patrick Winkle is a guy who has really broken out this year for Wichita. He's really playing well of late. He's a catcher, and I've not been giving him the love that he deserves. He's playing really well. I think he's got like an 800 OPS in Double-A this year. Is looking good behind the plate. He's kind of been under the radar for me in the system, and this is a system that, for a minute there, hasn't had a lot of catching depth. And, Patrick Winkle and Andrew Cassetti really are changing that. Nor Cardenas is a guy I like as well. So he's just another piece that adds to that catching depth down in the system and is really emerging. So again, those two guys, Pearson Ole and Patrick Winkle, guys I didn't even have in my top 50 in the last update, playing super well in Double-A. Next one, this is a multi-part question mark. I don't think I'm going to be able to completely address all of them, but he's asking if they'll ever get rid of the front office, Falvey and Levine. Why not? Why would they still have jobs? How do they get their jobs? So many, many questions here. And, if you want to know their background before coming to Minnesota, I would just suggest pull up their Wikipedia pages. We're not going to hash through all that. Why are they still around? You got to remember, this team was in horrible shape. Horrible shape. This organization was one of the worst prior to Derek Falvey taking over. Falvey's been in his role for 7 years. The previous 7 years prior to Derek Falvey being hired, the Twins had a .442 winning percentage. That is a 72-win average, a 90-loss season on average. The 7 years prior to Derek Falvey taking over, they ranked, I believe, 29th in wins in that 7-year stretch. Second to last in baseball before Derek Falvey took over. In the 7 years since Derek Falvey and company, Thad Levine, took over, the Twins have a .518 winning percentage. That is an 84-win pace, basically. If obviously the COVID season was in there, but if you take that winning percentage, apply it to a 162-game season, that's an 84-win year on average. The Twins rank 11th in wins among that sample. It's pretty undeniable that this front office has done a good job turning around the organization from where it was. Now, the question becomes in the future, why have they not gotten fired yet? That would be my answer there. Going forward, though, I think, and I've done this a bunch the last 3 years, it's super fair to question, are these the guys that can take them the next step? I'm not super confident of that. I think if they can't win a playoff game this year, they should move on, regardless of what else they've done well. It goes both ways. I think you can give them credit for getting this organization out of the gutter, really, but also say we can expect more. After 7 years, getting them this far is only going to give you so many goodwill. You got to give us over the hump, and if they're not the guys that can get us over the hump, I would not oppose looking elsewhere at all. I don't think they're highly overrated because I see very little positivity toward them. I see very little people willing to acknowledge that they did a good job of turning the organization around. And I think they do deserve credit for that. However, again, you only get a free pass for so long. Got to get to the next step here. Guys. Who the Twins are going to send to the Arizona Fall League this year? We should find out about that very soon, actually. It's usually announced around now. I came up with some names. This is really hard to predict sometimes. Some of the names I came up with, number one, Matt Cantorino. I would love to see Matt Cantorino in the Arizona Fall League. That would be amazing. He's been hurt all year. Andrew Bechtold is another name, guy who's been primarily a fielder, a hitter all of his career. He's throwing in the bullpen now, so they're converting him. He's also played some third base still. So he's doing a little bit of both. They're kind of focusing on pitching more now, so he has more time to invest to that. He throws in the upper 90s, and his slider looks like it's got potential. So I think him getting more work there would be good. A couple guys from the 2020 draft, Aaron Sabato and Aleric Solare. Those guys, I think, are going to be Rule 5 draft eligible this year, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't think Sabato's not put himself in a position to be added, but he also missed time this year. He got a hit in the wrist early this year, so he could use some more time. I just think giving him another look there, just giving him one last opportunity to show what he can do before you make that decision might make sense. Solari's had a really great year at Double-A, so I think him getting some more looks at some stiff competition would be good. I really like him. Sean Mooney is a pitcher. Some places have really been high on Sean Mooney as a prospect. He's been injured all year, but I think he's close to coming back, or either that or on rehab assignment. Ricardo Olivar, who's a guy who's only been as high as Fort Myers, but as an international signing, guys, those guys reached the Rule 5 draft eligibility super early, and he's going to be Rule 5 eligible this offseason. I really like Ricardo Olivar. They might want to get some looks at him there. Austin Martin. Austin Martin's only played like 50 games this year. I know he was in the AFL last year and was tremendous, but if they just want to get him some more games, it might make sense to put Austin Martin in the Arizona Fall League again this year. So that was a fun question. Thanks, Aaron. This kind of plays into that Ricardo Olivar question. Joshua asked, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to specifically get the facts down for you. He says it'd be cool to do an episode over baseball facts, like what average age a guy is when he hits the majors. That's a really good idea for like an off-season video when it's the winter and I don't know what to talk about. I think that'd be a really good one to look through. But one of the biggest things to keep in mind with these guys is, when did they enter professional baseball? Were they signed as like a 16-year-old on the international market? Were they drafted as a high school player? Were they drafted as a college player? That stuff is the biggest impact to how soon they're going to reach the major leagues. Because, again, Ricardo Olivar is 21 years old, I think, and he's going to be eligible for the Rule 5 draft, so the Twins are going to have to either add him to the 40-man roster or potentially lose him. I don't think he would get taken, but we're just sort of using him as an example for a conversation point. So, yeah, guys who enter pro ball earlier, guys who are signed out at the international market, guys who are drafted out of high school are going to reach the major leagues faster. Guys, you're getting drafted at 21, 22. It's going to take you. It takes a little while to get up through the minor leagues. Especially a guy like Cody Funderburk's a great example. You're a 15th round pick. You don't really completely steamroll your way through the minors. Kind of takes you a while to figure out your role. Takes you a while to get comfortable. You're going to be 25, 26 by the time you're ready for big leagues, if you make it that far. Most 15th round picks don't make it that far. So that's just kind of the way a lot of that goes. But on the flip side, if you're Brooks Lee, and you went to college, you were drafted out of college, but you're a super primo prospect, a super polished guy, you can be in AAA and knocking on the door. It's a lot of factors at play, but most of it has to do with how old guys are when they enter pro ball. David asked about Polanco. He's asking about what I think the Twins should do with Polanco and what can they do. He sort of acknowledges that this is more of an off-season topic, but we can talk about this. I love Jorge Polanco. So his option is not going to vest. He's not going to get to the plate appearances. If it had vested, his contract would basically be guaranteed. Since it's not vesting, it becomes a team option. So the Twins have the option to either pay him $10.5 million from next year or pay him $1 million and he becomes a free agent. They have so much infield right now. I still think they should give him that. They should pick that option up for $10.5 million. I mean, that's less than Joey Gallo's getting paid, right? I do think there's, legit concern about where he's going to be in the field. I think there's legit concern about his injury, all of the injuries he's had over his career. Unfortunately, just tons of lower body injuries. So I think it will be a decision. I don't think it's a complete slam dunk. But my thing with a lot of these is, just pick up the option, and then you can trade from your depth. Whether it's Polanco or somebody else, you can make a trade. Whereas if you're not picking up the option, you got to pay him $1 million to go away, and then you don't have that avenue anymore. So, and I love Jorge Polanco, so I would be sad to see him go. So I hope they pick up that option. Josiah asked, as a Nate Spears stan, I have to ask if you heard reviews on him. That is the St. Paul Saints hitting coach. I haven't heard anything really super specific about him, but he has a lot of the traits that I think are good in a hitting coach. Not that I know anything about it, but in my opinion, I like to see guys that are really good at keeping things positive and are openly fine about acknowledging how damn hard it is to hit. So when hitting coaches are really good at that stuff and keeping guys positive, I think that's great. He does a great job of that. He's been a coach for like 20 years or something. But I would say just in general, the Saints, I think that staff does a great job. I think they have a lot of talent, but I think they have so much fun. That team has so much fun. That team wins. They were talking about this on the broadcast the other day. That team set out a goal to make it to the AAA championship game this year. That winning is, everybody wants to win. And, you don't really manage all out to win in the minors. You're more trying to get guys work. You have to balance a lot of things in AAA, rehabbing guys. You have to do so much. That's not necessarily we're trying to win these games and go nuts. So you don't really hear that being a focus a lot in the minor leagues, But they have that, so they win. They have fun. I think that St. Paul staff, they have some kind of mojo working. The vibes are tremendous. Toby Gardenhire is doing a good job. Nate Spears, I think, is doing a good job. Thank you so much for checking this out. Here are the premium members. Thanks to all the channel members for your support. Really appreciate it. That starts at about $2 a month. You get an extra video from me every week. Link down in the description. We'll talk again soon.